Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of 2025 of Industrial Souls. And today we have the awesome pleasure of having with us for our guest, Mary Gannon, the editor-in-chief of Fluid Power World. And we are going to learn about Mary's background, her passion for writing, and just where she gets her warmth and fun side from. You're going to really enjoy Mary. I'm super glad that I have this chance to have her on the show. So hang on because things are about to get industrial. Welcome, Mary Gannon, to Industrial Souls. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me. It's very exciting to be your first show of the year. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually
Happy New
super
Year.
psyched. Yeah, Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everybody out there watching in LinkedIn land. Also, if you're out there watching live, especially, feel free to throw any comments you might have in the comments because interacting with your comments is fun and I like to do it. So if you have any comments, throw them in there. It could be, hey, Mary, your hair looks awesome today. Or if you have a question for Mary or me or anybody else out there, I guess, just throw it in the comments and we'll see what happens. Yeah, so thanks for joining me for the first show of 2025. That's kind of epic, actually, when you think about it. I've known you for actually kind of a long time. I feel like we've moved in the industrial circles for a number of years together. We've only met a few times, but we have met. And we've, worked together with Fluid Power World and we've been an advertiser. I've done advertising with you, done content with you, but also just, seen you around and been elbow to elbow with you in the industry for a long time. So it's cool to have, a decent amount of background with you and then to get to have you on my show. So thanks for taking the time out and joining us.
Thanks for having me. I know I was thinking about that earlier and I was resharing your post about this, that I'm like, we've known each other a long time and trade show circuit and just, client meetings and things like that. So, now people get to know us in a different way.
Yeah, right. It's a little different. And actually, it's been fun having our calls leading up to this. It's probably the most I've talked to you like in any one like stint, but it's actually been super enjoyable. So I know this is going to be a great show. And you love to talk about the industry and content and writing. So just to start us off, why don't you, for anybody who doesn't know you and just in general to catch us up, why don't you tell us about your personal background and how you got into what it is that you're doing now?
Sure. So the short answer of the story is I was unemployed, but
that happens.
That happens to a lot of us, right? But the real story is I always wanted to be a writer. I remember when I was like 8 years old writing my first short fiction story and I loved it. It was so exciting. So I always had this dream when I was a young child of being a novelist and becoming like, the next Stephen King or Laura Ingalls Wilder, like some famous writer. And as I got older, I kind of steered away from that. I always still kind of wanted to write books, but I kind of fell in love with journalism. A team of us started our first high school newspaper. We tried for 4 years, and finally our senior year, we actually published about 3 or 4 editions of it. So that was actually a very exciting time. And I went to school for journalism. I went to Boston University. I always tell people that journalism is learned. It's not learned in a classroom. I had 2 really amazing classes with the same professor. I had awesome internships. And I thought I was going to be a news reporter or, international journalist reporting from the front lines of wars or things like that. And then again, as I got older, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but I kept kind of veering that way. And my first job actually out of college was as a business reporter. And I thought, no, I need a job. I'm going to take this as it's going to be my jumping stone to like where I want to be, because who wants to write about business? And I fell in love with it.
So boring.
I was like stock market and, but when I got to go out to manufacturing facilities or small businesses and tell people's stories, I was like, this is really cool. This is so much better than a city council meeting or reporting from the front line of a war where I might get killed. And I was surprised, but part of it was I really did enjoy meeting all the people that were doing such amazing, cool things. And not all those businesses lasted. I would sometimes write about a business. But then I would see my stories hanging up in their businesses if it was like a restaurant or a store. And I thought that was really cool. Like they were so proud of what I did, sharing their story. I absolutely loved it. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then I did PR for a while. I was on a PR side. I did it in a local, like a very small agency. And again, we were working with small businesses, small schools, telling their stories. Same idea, just the opposite side. And that company, unfortunately, she let me go and then she closed because she was just too small. She couldn't keep it open. And I got a job. Well, I applied for a job at Penton Media, which was a huge publishing company at the time in the Cleveland area. And it was actually a restaurant magazine talking about restaurant businesses. And I'm like, that's cool. It's food, but it's also still business. And I didn't get the job, but they said, we have a job at one of our engineering magazines. Are you interested in interviewing? I was unemployed, so I said, sure. Got the job very quickly. The editor at the time who interviewed me, I could tell in our talk that he was going to say yes. So I got the job. Again, thought it was just going to be a stepping stone to something else, but absolutely fell in love with telling these stories, learning about technology, and then, and the people I work with. Honestly, I found as I got older that I really didn't like a lot of journalists. I hate Shakespeare, but a lot of the kids I went to college with, and even some other people I worked with, I was like, man, they're kind of annoying. But it's a totally different type of personality. A lot of the people I work with are engineers, so they have a different mindset, and I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, engineers definitely have a different mindset, but so do journalists. So, real quick, Carl Dyke out there saying, Happy New Year, Carl.
Hi, Carl.
Happy New Year back. We're glad you're joining us today. You really seem actually to be pretty focused on the storytelling element, which I think is kind of interesting. And this is a side note, but the story that I accidentally somehow wandered into the industrial area for work is super common. Let me just tell you that. Like, there's so many people who I'm talking on the show too, and like, how did you get into the industrial space? Tell me your story. Well, I never really meant to, but here I am. And what I found out is these people are amazing. And that's literally what you just said. This is very common kind of conclusion that people aren't thinking about industrial. They aren't thinking about industry as something they would want to go into, but they go into it by accident, find out it's actually pretty cool, and it's full of interesting and cool people. And that story, I think, is important. And I think it's important that story gets out because of the next generation of people who might work in the industrial marketplace, but might be kind of hesitant to get into it because of all the reasons all of us seem to be hesitant to get into it. So I think that's an important story, especially for ladies who are underrepresented in STEM-oriented type fields, maybe super hesitant to get into anything industrial. So you're blazing a trail. I think it's important that you tell your story, and you seem to love to tell other people's stories. So tell me more about the storytelling side of things.
Sure. I mean, honestly, like obviously a huge part of what I do is the technical side. We're writing engineering articles. I'm editing engineering articles, but there's always, there's always a personal side to that. These people are just as passionate as I am about whatever they're talking about.
Right.
And I think the storytelling thing is really important, like you said, to get that future generation because every day I see people retiring, right? Every day there's an announcement on LinkedIn, if not more than one. Hey, I'm happy to announce I'm retiring. Our demographics are drastically changing in fluid power, especially, but in industry and
Yeah.
manufacturing in general. And so we have to get people excited about this industry. And there's some really amazing people in it. Young people that again, like you
Hmm.
would never expect to see, doing this cool stuff. I am not in any way, shape, or form an engineer or somebody who liked math or science. And I could not build a hydraulic system and make it run. Obviously, I'm not building these systems. I'm writing about it. I understand
Right.
how they work, but I don't. I'm not that good at it. But I love them. It's really cool to see how we are doing things in the world through fluid power. And I think that's kind of goes hand in hand. I think most of the people that do this are just so into the technology, and there's so much great passion out there. I'm starting a new series actually this year, and we are launching a digital only edition that's going to run every other month of our actual print edition. And in that, I'm going to feature faces of fluid power, profiles of fluid power. I still haven't settled on which name it's going to be, but it's just going to be, stories with men, women, young, old, technicians, engineers, whatever they might be, business owners, marketing people who are in this industry. And I want to show all that you can do in fluid power in manufacturing because it's not you don't have to just be an engineer. And in fact, a lot of
Yeah.
people in our industry are not engineers. They're highly technical people, but they don't even have an engineering degree, a lot of them. So it's kind of fun to tell those stories, and I can't wait to launch that series. And one thing I thought was interesting you said about the women, maybe, gosh, 6 years ago, we were doing our fluid power technology conference, and we did a women in fluid power panel where we had, I think, four women on stage. And that was the most women I've ever seen in an audience at a fluid power event.
Yeah.
And it's a small event. We only got a couple hundred people to it, but to have 30 or 40 women in the audience just because of that panel tells me that we need to keep pushing the envelope there. So
Definitely. I think in all of industry, if you see the amount of traction and the amount of interest that other people, other ladies, especially who are out there talking about, ladies in STEM, ladies in industry. I just talked to someone yesterday about this, with there's several groups out there and podcasts and events and all of this for the ladies side of things because you're small and mighty in terms of numbers. You know what I mean? There's a lot more interest, I think, maybe than there was in the past. So
mhm.
I would say, I mean, as an outside observer, really, that it's growing, but um, it's definitely an area that needs talked about and needs getting like the next generation excited about what could be done, what kind of roles are out there. These companies really are kind of like the backbones of our economies in our countries.
Absolutely.
Literally
Yes.
in many ways. So this is all very important stuff. Carl, with another comment here. People remember the stories of our lives. They stick. Machinery is fascinating, but it happens because of people and their stories. And it can be hard, I think, sometimes to connect those dots,
Mhm.
uh, to connect them yourself or as a marketer to connect them or even to connect down to like, why does this widget we're making improve somebody's life? Like sometimes you just don't even think about that. But when I worked in fluid power, I was surprised when you think about how ubiquitous fluid power components are, and you think,
Mhm.
the road you drove into work on, the
Mhm.
machinery that made that had fluid power components in it, the
Absolutely.
machinery that made the asphalt, the machinery that put it down, the machinery that's making your coffee. made the candy bar you're about to eat. It's everywhere, affecting every area of life. We got another comment here from Nick. Afternoon, guys. Afternoon, Nick. And he says, "Oh, I remember a conference with the women in fluid power. It was great to attend." So yeah, I think that's an interesting angle. It's not the only angle out there, though. What do you think it is besides maybe like attrition, the industry getting older and people leaving, and trying to get the next generation engaged? What other things do you think the fluid power industry specifically, if you want, or just industry in general, is struggling with when you're talking to all your customers and contacts and people in the industry? What's keeping them up at night, do you think?
I mean, I don't know if it's keeping them up, but I mean, it's changing so fast. I mean, and it's technology, right? AI, all this efficiency standards and needs, and so companies have to be really fast and on their toes to keep up with all that. And
Hmm.
if you're not keeping up with AI and the green movement, you're going to get left behind. Unfortunately, I mean, and the thing is like when people talk about electrification or sustainability, energy efficiency, hydraulics isn't going to go away, fluid power is not going to go away, but we
Right.
just have to do a better job of making our components and our technologies better. But if you aren't willing to kind of do the research and look into that, then you're going to have some problems with your company. And so I think that's kind of the biggest thing that's really going on in the industry right now. I don't know if it's a stressful thing in the sense of keeping them up at night, but maybe it is for the smaller companies who don't have the bandwidth to really look into that. But I have talked to some small companies
Hmm.
that are embracing it, and they're absolutely loving it. I know one company here in Greater Cleveland. I'm not going to say their name because I know they don't want to be talked about yet, but they're embracing AI. They're using it on their factory floor because they are having the issue of employee retention. But they're also using it sort of on the marketing side to help them create content and start building themselves a brand, which they don't really use a lot of yet. They don't use that a lot. So I think companies that are willing to kind of go into that fearful place are really going to be successful. And I think that's probably the big thing that's kind of going to shake things up in the next couple of years is those two ideas of electrification, autonomy, AI, all that new technology that's coming on board to kind of change how these machines are run and how the people are going to be using them. But I don't think the hydraulics is going to change that much.
Well, it hasn't changed much in 100 years or whatever it's been, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think the applications are going to change. But I think you're right that in general, companies need to, some industries, and fluid power would be one of them, have been around for a very long time,
Mhm.
and they're not used to really having to rethink some of
Yeah.
these some of these kind of like fundamental things about business, as much as say a newer technology like additive manufacturing
Mhm.
in industrial, where they're much more likely to already have kind of like a modern mindset about like what are some out of the box ways that we can apply this technology to manufacturing. So I think the stalwart industries are a little bit have negative momentum in
Mhm.
that regard. How are you, either personally or through Fluid Power World and your role in your industry publications, how are you helping companies like that to grow in the things that they need to grow?
I think we just, have to keep opening their minds. And that's why, like, I said we're trying new content avenues, we're trying new ways to get out to people, and we're going to be trying, other articles like that, profiles and fluid power.
I
Um,
think that's a great idea too.
yeah, we have to kind of just keep showing them different ways to survive. And honestly, like a hydraulic adapter fitting company is not going to be able to do much, right? Like they're not going to be making an electrified fitting or whatever, right? I mean, but there are things they can do, like we said, like they can automate a lot of their marketing and things like that, where they're taking things and they're building brands better. Um, and I think that's just kind of the story they need to tell. It's all back to the story with a lot
It
of this
is.
stuff. And but also to like, embracing it, even if there's nothing that you can really change. I mean, you can't make AI but I think it was Lisa Itel, one of our editors. We were just doing a research on another webinar, and she was talking about a brushless motor. I don't know, a motor, an electric motor that
Mhm.
was designed using AI. So
Mm.
that there to kind of build the best profiles, and there obviously people are working on it, but they're using these tools to make their components better. And if you can do that, you can speed up your production, you can speed up your design process. So I think everyone needs to kind of embrace it, though I do have some, I mean, obviously I do have some concerns about AI, but I do think that AI is here to stay. I am concerned about the data use that it uses and all the electricity it's using right now, because that's a huge thing that people are talking about. But
Yeah.
I do think that that's something that a lot of, instead of chat GPT, ask me a question kind of thing. But if we can really hone in on where we can use it to make a better product, make it just be a little bit more efficient, the flow is a little bit better, the pressure is a little bit better, that's going to make huge strides in making hydraulics more efficient. So I think that's kind of where a lot of companies need to take it.
Yeah. Plus, I think with hydraulics, just to stay in this wheelhouse, is there's certain things that just lend themselves to certain methods of power transmission, and there's certain things that just work better for certain applications than other things, like making an electric motor or a linear actuator is very good, especially for very precise things,
Mhm.
things where you need a very specific kind of range of motion or even profile of motion. A little less uh, good when it comes to we need to lift 6,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So there's definitely applications where it's like, okay, it makes sense to use hydraulics, and it's going to continue to make sense. But then uh, you still see innovations, like for instance in electrified pumps that are smarter and give
Mhm.
more control to the user. And I'm not really in that world anymore, but I know that even when I was last in that world, they were still coming out with things that brought that technology
Yeah.
in, or like a fitting with a sensor built into it.
Mhm.
That is an innovation that was happening and has already happened, but is a way that something that is not a million years old, but like a technology that has been around for a while
Yeah,
could be adapted and
absolutely.
made actually intelligent,
Mhm.
where it wasn't before. So there's definitely ways to use this technology. Speaking of AI, though, interesting, and this is just a little more personal. With AI, one of the areas that AI has really kind of blossomed first, or at least most obviously, is in generative AI in terms
Mhm.
of content, writing, which is really, my daughter's an artist. Okay. She, you know, uh, is very aware of AI invading
Mhm.
her space. How has it been for you personally as you've seen AI, exploding? And in a way, I mean, it's invading your personal space
Mhm.
as a writer and a publisher.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have to embrace it. I have used it as a tool. I'm not using it to write my articles, but it's kind of an idea generator for me.
Right.
But I have also used it to kind of compare. We did some comparison ideas last year. A bunch of us editors were tasked to kind of take our top FAQs and put them into AI and see how AI did at writing the same article that a human being wrote. And they were technically accurate. They were very good, and I'm sure they'd probably even be better now. This was like maybe 5 or 6 months ago, and AI just constantly improves.
Right.
But what was missing again, and just like Carl even reiterated, was that human element. When you can tell everyone the basics, how a hydraulic system or a pneumatic actuator works and uses the compressed air, but it's where the humans get in and they have those experiences and they know this is a way to make it better or this is a way to troubleshoot your system. A machine, a computer doesn't know that yet. Eventually it'll keep reading the information that's out there, but the stories that we had put into AI to kind of compare what we had was so much better to actually help people that are working in the industry better design their systems, better use their systems, better, troubleshoot and maintain their systems. What AI did was great to educate.
Right.
Maybe somebody who's new to the industry. And so I think there's just a big nuance there. And again, it comes back to people. It really does. You're not going to have that human element in any kind of an AI thing. And you talked about your daughter with art. I laugh at the AI images that's comes out. They are so bad. And they're getting better. But most of the time I'm like, we could not possibly use this as art, so.
Yeah, it is getting better. It's good for like right now, even all the way that it's come, I feel like it's kind of good for throwaway art. Like art you stick on a post and
Yeah.
and it goes out and
Yeah.
and then like an hour later it's forgotten. It's good for stuff like that. I'm sure it will continue to get better. They're doing remarkable things with it, and yeah, there is an economy of processing, and it's kind of like Bitcoin. Like it has its own fascinating qualities, but also there's like whole countries almost of electric grid running it.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is kind of like a limit that it will hit eventually. But yeah, I agree with the personal angle, and this is why I thought your idea about the personal profiles is interesting. It's actually why I started my show, and it is that the not cure like it's a disease, but the cure for all of this over availability of content, even if it's good content. The antidote or the reverse of it is the human element, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just knowledge. There is a component of knowledge, but business isn't done by dictionaries. It's done by human beings. Problems that we solve are solved by humans for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Even if a human is using a tool, whatever tool it is, whether it's a supercomputer made by NVIDIA or whether it's a wrench, it is a human that is solving another human's problem. And I think it's important to highlight the importance of the human, right? So that's what this show is all about. And it sounds like you're looking at in a similar way of just saying like, we need to bring faces. We need to bring people forward and say, this is what it's about. And no longer is it about, I know more than you. Everybody knows everything now. You go to your ChatGPT or Gemini app and it can spell you out a manual for whatever it is you want.
Yeah.
It's the human layer that really sets everything apart. So what is it about you, I guess, that makes you passionate about the personal side? Because I think you are. Yeah, I know you do a lot of technical writing, but I know that the core of you is the passionate storyteller about people. And so what is it? Why is it that way for you?
It probably comes back to my ethnicity, to be honest, and how I was raised. I'm Irish, 100% Irish. I've never done a DNA test, but I can go pretty far back, and I'm sure I have something else in there, but it's a long ways. But and that's what the Irish are. They really are storytellers. I'm kind of an introvert, and people always laugh when I tell them that because I'm very good at being social, but I can enjoy my time alone and in the quiet, but I still love to engage with people. I love the storytelling. I used to love hearing my dad talk and tell stories, and he was an extrovert. He was always out with people. He was always enjoying life. And I think that's just kind of what I was raised as with my family. My mom's was first generation American, but we were always with cousins. And when we would go home to Ireland to see my dad's family, we were always with family. And it was just these relationships and the stories and the jokes and the laughter. And I really think that's where it all comes from, is that I just grew up always enjoying stories and laughing with my family. And now it's friends and family. And it continues to grow. And and most of my family and friends are Irish. Well, obviously all my family is, but most of my friends too. Like, you kind of stay where you're happy, and like I'm always connected with my Irish folk, and I just think that's probably where it all comes from. And I'm instilling that in my daughters. They always tease how Irish they are. They like to tell my husband that they're more Irish than him.
Is he
You know,
Irish or no?
and so we're very proud Irish people, and I really do think that's probably, where it all comes from, is the Irish storytelling connection
Yeah.
side.
Oh, well, that's cool. I'm also Irish. I'm not 100%, but my last name's 100% Irish.
Yes, and yeah, I know that name very well. I know a few
Yeah.
Joyces besides you, John.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're few, but mighty too. All right. Well, this, I know it goes by fast, but this has got us to the end of our little 30-minute slot. So it's been a blast talking to you, Mary. I don't want to take any more of your time away from you today, but I really want to thank you for joining us, telling us your story, and sharing a little bit about you and your experience and what you see going on in the market with me and with the show viewers and with Carl, who's out there commenting away. Thank you, Carl. But thank you, Mary, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. And you're right, the half hour did fly by.
It goes by fast, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does. It does.
All right, everybody out there, thanks for tuning in to Industrial Souls, and we will see you next time.